Hi, this is a video response to a blog posting, a video blog posting by Scott Thornbury on his excellent website, An A to Z of ELT, on the topic of P is for PPP, which, if you're an English language teacher, you'll already know stands for Present, Practice, Produce, or Presentation, Practice, Production. If you haven't watched that post yet, I highly recommend it, and you can find it by clicking here. Okay. Now, I thought it was a very interesting presentation on this long-running topic, and Scott made some very interesting points. The point that PPP is most usually associated with behaviorism, but in fact there's very little reason for believing that, and that its roots or its theoretical underpinnings are much closer to cognitive notions of learning rather than behaviorist notions. And I thought that was an excellent point to make, and thank you very much for making it. The other interesting point that has been picked up in many of the comments on Scott's posting is this idea of PPP looks like a lesson should look from the learner's point of view and also from the teacher's point of view. Learners expect knowledge to be conveyed about a given subject by teachers to them, and then they expect to be expected to put it to use. So this idea of a teacher standing at the front explaining or illustrating some rule of form and then providing them with opportunities, controlled to less controlled, to use it, this seems to fit their mental model or schema for learning. In other words, PPP has face validity. The criticisms were that the first P, the presentation, takes over, and I agree with you, Scott, that this is, through training and careful work in the classroom, a fairly minor criticism, and a teacher can usually get over that quite quickly and become more efficient at presenting new language or representing known language. I think your other point, that it assumes a certain linear additive model of learning, is absolutely true. And while I agree that learning language is recursive, I also think that your supplementary point that perhaps there is a time and a place for using PPP to return to language that has come up but maybe gone unnoticed, or taking up the point of need, as you've said in previous posts, and taking a PPP approach to introducing that new knowledge or that new language at the point of need, is a reasonable approach. I think it is fair to say that PPP requires a certain dissection of language, a certain pigeonholing or separation of language into its component parts. But that doesn't necessarily mean that during a PPP based lesson that these associations and networks between various discretely analysed bits of language can't be established or re-established or highlighted and therefore noticed. I found one of the most interesting points in your talk the idea that PPP can serve as a priming tool, as a noticing or an awareness raising tool, so that once a teacher realises maybe students are at that point of need where they are ready to take on a piece of language, or maybe they're ripe or primed to take on this new piece of language, then a short presentation at the right point, at the point of need, may help this new nascent sense of how the language operates to kind of unearth itself, which I thought was a very attractive idea, and thank you for making it. And I think two comments that have been made by your readers are also well worth thinking about. One by Mr Darkbloom, who made the point that many teachers, many experienced teachers, don't think that novice or beginner teachers have any alternative but to use PPP because of their lack of teaching experience or teaching competence. And he's asked the question, well, you know, can you expect teachers who are just beginning their careers, maybe just beginning their training, to teach Unplugged or to teach TBL instead of using a PPP coursebook-based model? And as I'm sure you'll already know, I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect this, and I've been trying to show how reasonable it is on my blog, which you can also find here, teachertrainingunplugged.wordpress.com. If you're interested, Mr Darkbloom, go over and have a look at what we've been trying to do in Hamburg, and you might like what you see. The other point I thought was very interesting was that from Glennie, who suggested, how did students feel about PPP? And this raises a very, very interesting question for me. Does PPP have value because learners feel it has value? This goes back, Scott, to your point about face validity, that it looks like the kind of learning that learners think learning is, as it were. It looks like a lesson, therefore they will receive it as one. And, to mangle Peter Drucker's words, value is what the customer perceives as value. Well, maybe a lesson is what a learner perceives as a lesson. And maybe a lesson that isn't perceived as a lesson by a learner isn't going to be noticed as such, isn't going to be received as such, and therefore doesn't have as much impact. From that point of view, maybe PPP has a very valid place in a teacher's repertoire. And also it does raise the question, going back to your point about use and overuse of PPP, if we are in a situation where learners anticipate lessons to look like PPP looks, then how far are we as professionals entitled to restrict the number of lessons that we share with our learners, in terms of not offering them a PPP model when perhaps that's what they expect, want, and may therefore benefit from? I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Bye for now.